So I'm going to tell you, this is, I guess, our last story of the day, and I'm going to tell you a little story about a girl, now a young woman, who, thank you, who, though not given the gift of speech, has communicated to more people and changed more lives, and has taught me more about what it means to be a good person than anyone else, any sage teacher ever could. So this is a little story, and it is Carly's story.
Finally tonight, the world of autism through the eyes of an exceptional teenager. This is the story of a young woman who could not speak a word, could not communicate at all, until something rather amazing happened that could provide real insight into the world of autism. Here's ABC's John McKenzie.
Her name is Carly, and for most of her 13 years, she has been locked inside her own world, diagnosed with severe autism and developmental delay.
People would absolutely assume that this was a severely impaired, incapable kid, incapable of communication, and pretty much write her off.
But her parents never did. From the time she was 4, Carly got 25 to 40 hours a week of behavioral therapy and speech therapy.
And we tried hard to get her to talk verbally, but it just wasn't in the cards for Carly.
But one day, 2 years ago, sitting at a computer, she surprised them all.
Carly just spelled help, hurt, and she typed teeth, and we had no idea that she could actually spell.
Can't talk with my mouth, but I learned how to spell and I can talk on my computer.
Working slowly, she revealed what it's like to live with severe autism.
People just look at me and assume that I am dumb, because I can't talk or act differently than them. I think people get cleared with things that look or seem different than them.
Carly began writing how she wanted to be treated like any other teenager, emailing her father at work, and asking when could she go on a date.
We were stunned. I mean, we realized inside was this intelligent, articulate, emotive person that we had never met. This was just unbelievable because it opened up a whole new way of looking at her.
What Carly's story illustrates is that when children with autism can't talk, we have to continually explore options for them to be able to communicate.
To be able to open up about living with autism.
If I could tell people one thing about autism, it would be that I don't want to be this way, but I am. So don't be mad, be understanding.
For her friends and family, that's become a lot easier now that Carly has found her voice. John McKenzie, ABC News, New York.
And I must tell you, it is pretty wonderful to be able to say that Carly has agreed to answer some of the questions you might have about living with autism. You can just go to our website at abcnews.com.
And to answer she did, I think they had 250,000 hits that night. So this is where the story starts. Carly is a twin. She was twin B, the feisty one originally in utero. And any parent here knows why you have kids, right? We have kids because we want to fundamentally connect with and bond with someone as close as we possibly can. In fact, I asked a psychologist once who has a number of more geriatric patients or clients, and he said no one ever complains about not working hard enough or making enough money. They complain about not having a close enough bond with their children, actually. And so you can imagine how very, very painful it was for us to get the diagnosis that we would not have that bond with our child. And we thought that was the reason to have kids, or although a friend of mine said the other reason to have kids is for spare parts, like a kidney or an eyeball or something if you need it. So that's another good reason to have children, and twins doubles your odds of a part that fits. So we had the twins, and life started to fall into a rhythm. We had a 5-year-old, and we had now these 2 girls, and we brought them home to our palatial mansion there, where Rasta meets pasta in Toronto, and that was life. In the early days, babies in Bunting, and 8 bottles up the stairs at night, knowing that all 8 would be gone by 6 o'clock in the morning when you crawled your tired butt down the stairs again. But it felt pretty good because my job was taking off. We bought a new house. We were making some money, the kids were. It was tough having these kids. My wife had 3 or 4 miscarriages due to something called a luteal phase defect, and in fact. I wanted to name the kids Clomid and progesterone in celebration of the medication that finally resulted in having these kids. My wife prevailed, and we named them Carly and Taryn, and that's Carly on the left, Taryn in the middle, and Matthew on the end. And life was pretty sweet. It was busy, but it was a very nice life. Eventually, though, we noticed the two moving apart from each other, and while they had spent 9 months and then months after, so close together, even sharing a bassinet, we started to learn that they were the front and back cover of a book with just a lot in between them. Carly missed every milestone. Taryn missed no milestones. Taryn set the record on milestones, walking, talking, feeding. Carly couldn't sit up. She couldn't roll over. She cried incessantly. We started calling her Cryly. We use a lot of dark humor in my family. It's a coping mechanism. Eventually, when they started playing with toys, Carly wouldn't play so much as turn the toy over and sort of scratch the back almost as if she were looking at the country of origin, and then she would throw it and she would scream. And Carly and Taryn would go off to play dates and really thrive. And her older brother, of course, the same thing, and not Carly. She stayed home and did not do very much except run and break things and flop on the ground and bang her head. And we tried really hard to be a normal family, right? To be upper middle class or middle class in Toronto, a professional. You just want to be normal. You just want to go and do those things that all your friends go and do. You want to go out with all your friends. And we kept the kids together, and they, tried to get them to play together. And they are lovely kids, even to this day. The two of them, Matthew and Taryn, are incredibly protective, wonderful siblings to their sister. And I love this picture because I think it just sums up life perfectly. The big brother kind of bossing him around, Taryn standing there flipping him off, and Carly sitting in the middle kind of, staring at the firmaments and the heavens above. Life was not normal at all. By this point, my wife had gone through the first of what would be 2 bouts with cancer and all the fun that comes with chemotherapy and everything along with it. Carly now had a diagnosis of autism, PDD, GDD, MOUSE, oral motor apraxia, which prevents speech, and we were told that we'd be lucky if she'd intellectually grow past the age of 6 or 7, which the doctors tried to tell us was good news because 6-year-olds can toilet train and feed themselves. And as a family of professionals, there's an arrogance, right? And you go, that's not good enough. My kid has to get an education and has to be able to have a career and go off and do things. And that is not the promise that we were given. We were anything but normal. And so what starts to happen is you divide and conquer. And not divide and conquer in the way that parents know how to do. Like, you go do the shopping and I'll take the kids, but really divide and conquer. You stay with Carly because she's just too destructive and uncontrollable. And the other thing I should point out is Carly never slept. And I don't mean we had some sleepless nights. I mean she never, ever slept. If she slept 2 hours a night, we were lucky. So we were up all the time with her. And even today, she doesn't sleep very much. And so what you start to see is we tried to do things and go out and participate in the world and have friends and go off and have a life, but we were very much a divide and conquer kind of family. And bit by bit, what I see when I look back at family pictures is my daughter slowly disappearing from the family because she couldn't be with us, whether it were New York or San Francisco or even the beloved Cape Cod, where we go every year. We go with a very close friends, another family, who are very understanding. It would be totally fine if we had brought Carly, but what kind of vacation would that be? So even here, she's left home with a nanny or a therapist while we go off and have a vacation. And I guess we sort of kid ourselves, and we said if she's cognitively impaired, she doesn't really notice that we're missing, maybe. You know, maybe she doesn't really want to go to the beach or go to Cape Cod or go to San Francisco, although many years later when she did learn to write, and we learned that she had a sardonic wit and a good use of guilt, just like my grandmother would have taught her. It's great, she's got a Jewish grandmother in her. She said to Barb, her speech pathologist, "Have you ever gone on a family vacation and left one cute kid behind?" Ouch. So, who knew though then, right? In those days, we could sort of kid ourselves. And we do have lovely pictures of Carly. She was a beautiful, beautiful, and is a beautiful, beautiful girl. But they're all solitary pictures. Or they're pictures of her away at a special needs camp with other kids on the spectrum or with other challenges. And is she having fun? I don't know. Maybe. She could never tell us. We never knew what she thought. So I just felt terrible that I'd be sending one daughter away to this special needs camp and taking the other two kids on lovely vacations or taking them out. And I felt guilty about that. I felt guilty about sending her away and guilty about other people taking care of my daughter and not me. And most of all, I just felt frickin' heartbroken that my daughter was always alone. And you know, I'd look at Taryn and you'd see prom in her future and graduation and marriage and a career and all these things. And I'd look at Carly and not see any of those things. And then, as you heard, at age 10, we had this unbelievable breakthrough. So we were away on one of these family -1 vacations at the Grand Canyon. My wife and I took the kids there. And we got a call from Howard who said, "Carly's been typing all day." And you know, the cell phone connection wasn't great at the canyon. It was 7 years ago, so the cell phones weren't as strong anyway. And I said, "What do you mean, typed? Like, you know, it's like saying the family dog just spoke or something." And he said, "No, she typed." And we kept pushing him, and my wife and I said, maybe they helped her. I don't know, I don't quite get it. And so we didn't actually totally believe this until we got home, and it even then took a few weeks before we saw her type. This is a couple years later, but you can see the way Carly types. It's with one hand and one finger, and 7 years later, it's not a lot faster. The technology's a little bit better, so she can go a little quicker, but it is a very painful and slow process for her to focus and sit still, and I'll explain a little bit more in a few minutes why that's the case. The news media, particularly in the US, likes to paint this as a miracle. They like to paint it as some sort of divine intervention, and it's anything but divine intervention. There were, as the news did accurately report, 25 to 40 hours a week of ABA therapy, which is behavioral therapy, plus speech-language communication therapy, occupational therapy, music and art, and everything else that goes with it. She had 60, 70 hours of intervention a week, which means while other kids were off playing, Carly was working. And she was working mostly with these two saints right here, Barb Nash Fenton and Howard Dalal. Barb's been with Carly since she was 2 years old and is still with her today at 17, so that's 15 years, and Howard since Carly was about 8. And these guys have helped her learn to communicate, and they continue to push her and teach her how to communicate, how to deal with her OCD, her obsessive compulsive disorder, which is very, very severe, and they help her figure out what her dreams are and how she's going to accomplish them. And the truth really is that everyone works for Carly, as you'll see in a few minutes. So she is the boss. My wife calls it Carly Inc., and I think my wife's the CEO and I'm the janitor. So right around the time that 2020, the ABC News, the shorter piece you just saw, and then there was a follow-up piece and a 2020 piece and CNN and lots of media here in Canada, this wonderful thing called the interweb helped us get her message out there with a website, which she named Carly's Voice, Changing the World of Autism. And there we posted some of her writings, which are funny and insightful and get more and more insightful and funny as the days go by. And she posts some of her media clips and that kind of thing. Facebook, thankfully, came along just after that. So I did this screenshot, I guess, about a week or two ago, and she had 34,000 followers. This morning she has 35,050 followers on her public Facebook page and 25,000 on her Twitter page. And what we hear over and over from people as far as New Zealand and India and Israel and England is that Carly provides inspiration. And she provides insight, and she answers questions daily. She jokes around. She has a very wicked sense of humor. Usually my son and I are sort of the brunt of it most of the time, but I'm happy to have that. And she uses social media not just to chatter away the way a lot of teenagers do, but she uses it to change the world and to teach people and inspire people and get a very clear message across. This past March, in time for Autism Awareness Month, which is April, she had this idea based on the success of a couple of Broadway shows, The Lion King being one of them, which did an autism-friendly evening where they took the lights down a bit, they took the sound down a bit, they just kind of modified it a bit and invited an audience of autistic kids. She said, I'd love to have an autism-friendly talk show. And I want to get Kelly Ripa or Ellen DeGeneres or someone to do it. Now, it hasn't happened yet, but the way she thought to do it is to start an online petition. And she said, I won't tweet or Facebook again until I get 5,000 signatures. And within a couple of weeks, she had 7,000 signatures. So we'll see, maybe by next year we can get to Kelly Ripa and we'll have a autism-friendly talk show. But she uses social media in other ways too. Her occupational therapist had done some volunteer work in Honduras last year, and she said, you know, Carly, it's pretty sad because in this little town of Roatan, the people are so poor that the disabled crawl in the mud or their parents have to carry them because they can't afford wheelchairs and crutches. And Carly thought that was a pretty awful thing, which it is. So she raised, I can't remember how many numbers of pieces it was, but a number of assistive devices that she had cleaned and repaired and shipped to Honduras. She raised the money to have it shipped, and they sent those off late last year, I guess, well, January or so of this year. So she uses all means possible to reach out to the world, and that's such an incredible thing. So one of the subtexts of this story is the power of technology, especially for those who have a limited scope, either because they're shut in from physical disabilities or they're shut in because they can't speak or they can't reach out. And the myth is that those with autism live in a very small world, perhaps, but through the power of technology and social media, they can reach her imprint now is literally millions of people who reach her, who she reaches through social media. And through all the struggles we've had, through the cancer and through the autism and the predictions that my daughter would live in a group home by the time she was 15 and all those horrible things, I think of myself as one of the lucky ones because autism affects 1 in 88 kids now. Most of those kids are not receiving sufficient intervention, therapy, and support. We're very lucky we were able to provide it for Carly. And now, 17 years later, I have my daughter back. I have times that we can do the kinds of things that everyone takes for granted, like go out for a birthday dinner, like hang out with friends, like hang out with family. We have some exceptional things. We go to LA every year. 2 years ago, Holly Robinson Peete, the actress, and her husband Rodney Peete, the football player, had started a foundation called Hollyrod, and they gave Carly a Youth Champion Award at a huge gala in Beverly Hills. And, who would have thought, right? Who would have thought that 10 years ago or 15 years ago, Carly would be flown to LA and feted at a big celebration. She reached out to Joe Mantegna, who has an adult daughter with autism, and got him to help her with a school project she was working on, as well as Bob Torty and the journalist Meredith Vieira also helped her with the school project. As Spencer mentioned, we reached out at Carly's request to Ellen DeGeneres. When Carly was 12, she wrote a bat mitzvah speech for her bat mitzvah, which in and of itself was unbelievable because we had never seen her write anything that long before. And she pushed us, and through 6 degrees of separation, we got to Ellen, and Ellen agreed to record the speech on video, which we played at the event. And then every year since, we go back and we visit with her right there. They are celebrating, they both have the same birth date, and they're celebrating their birthday together in Ellen's dressing room with vegan cupcakes that we brought. And most importantly, I think Carly now comes on vacation with us, and she hangs out with her cousins in Cape Cod when we go. She does a lot more things than she's ever been able to do before. She joined a baseball team a few years back, and she takes yoga. For a few years, she went to extreme sports camp in Boulder, Colorado, where she was doing high wire and whatever the hell that is, and rock climbing and wakeboarding, and just things that you never would have imagined if you had only listened to the doctors at 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years old. Yeah, parasailing. I will never do that. Today, Carly still struggles mostly with her OCD. She said, I can deal with not being able to speak. I can deal with the autism. The OCD is a horrible, horrible thing, and there really are no cures for it, though we are trying our very best. She uses technology now, thank God, with the iPad. She is able to bring that to school. She's able to communicate much more quickly and efficiently than she could 5 or 10 years ago. And while this picture is a couple years old, she just looks great. She looks happy. She looks beautiful. And she's doing things that we never would have imagined. She's now in a mainstream high school, big city high school, in gifted classes. Her teacher said if she completes her coursework this coming month, June, she'll make honor roll because she's earning, I think, 95 98 average. And so we decided to write a book. We never imagined we would write a book together, but Carly said, I have a message to get out there, and my message and her journey is long, and news clips are 2 minutes and too short. So we decided to put this book down, and it has a very simple message. It has its ups and downs, and it has been a challenging life, but it has a very simple message. I know this is too many words for one slide, but I'll just let you read it because that's the way we hear things from Carly. And in the book, she wrote the last chapter, and she talks quite a bit and quite eloquently about what it's like to be autistic, what it's like to have sensory processing issues, and to have to listen to thousands and thousands of sounds and words all at the same time and have to sort them. And she coined the term audio filter them and pocket them up so she can understand them. But most importantly, that we all have inner voices, and we need to push, push, push to get those inner voices out, particularly those who are nonverbal. So I'm going to leave you with 6 Carly wisdoms to torture the English, 6 life lessons, and these following quotes are from Carly herself. And she says, in a world of silence, communication is everywhere. You just have to know how to look. And to me, that doesn't mean, stop and smell the roses or whatever. What that means is we can learn from anyone and everyone and everything. Everything we do, we can learn from. Go into the supermarket, right? The first story we heard today, the homeless person, I'm going to step over him, No, you can learn from that person. You can learn from this person who is supposed to be institutionalized, who can't speak, who should be bitter and angry and pissed off, but isn't. She's actually charming and funny and smart, so pay attention to everybody. In a crowded room, the best way to be heard is to yell, but the best way to be understood is to explain yourself. Yeah, how quickly do we lose our temper? Do we scream at people? Do we tell them to F off? Do we, when really, if you just take a minute and take a breath, you don't always have to defend yourself when someone accuses you of something or calls you a name, but just take a breath and stop and explain yourself. And today, with social media, we have so many more ways of reaching out to people and expressing our point of view and letting them know what we think. We all have an inner voice that needs to come out, and we just need someone to believe in us and push us to get it out. Absolutely. We as parents listen to our kids, listen, and help them, because they're not always going to articulate things the way that they mean it. It's not always going to come out exactly the way they intend it to. So you have to listen to the subtext, and that's true with any of us that work in business or work in any kind of large organization. And the other thing I say to our younger staff is if you have a thought, if you have an intuition about something, believe in it. The worst that someone can say is, I don't agree, or you're not exactly right, and you can re-educate somebody. But you have to trust in your intuition and trust in that inner voice, or as I guess it was Seinfeld, who's the crazy one? Kramer. He calls it his little man, right? You got to listen to the little man. Wasn't a little man, Jerry. The next two go together. I've just learned that because you have a wall in front of you doesn't mean you can't knock it over. Carly, there's something about her. She never picks small challenges. She said, I'm not just going to write a speech for my bat mitzvah, you're going to get Ellen DeGeneres to read it. Jesus. I don't want to just go to a good school, Mom. I want to go to a public high school. Now she says she wants to go to university. That's great. She wants to go to UCLA. That's in frickin' California. I live in Toronto. So, you know, she did say to John McKenzie of ABC a few years ago that she wanted to work for Dear Mr. Obama. Regardless of your politics, it doesn't really matter. Her point was she wants to be the ambassador for autism. And she will be. You know, she already is. She's already reaching out and changing people's opinions and understanding of this very mysterious condition. So, you know, what I take from that is dreams are good. You know, mid-sized dreams are okay. But really, really big dreams get you off the couch. And people get behind huge dreams, right? I want to go to the moon. That's a big friggin' dream. So I think that next time you're setting a dream, multiply it by 10 and go for that one. Better to have one huge dream, and I think you actually have greater odds of succeeding. And the last, a bit schmaltzy, because you've got to end on schmaltz, especially here at TED. The world looks beautiful when we walk with our eyes open. I think that's particularly moving for me because of who it came from. Because, as I said, this kid should just be pissed off and angry. She sees her beautiful sister going on dates, successful in sports, doing well at school, breezing in and out, like life just looks so easy to her twin sister. And everything Carly does is a fight. Everything takes work. And yet, that's her attitude. Everything can look beautiful if you just look at it with open eyes. Thank you.